Hello and welcome to Chicanime. My name is Lauren, and today I'm going to be looking at a ZeronicKiba video. It's been a minute, but I have missed him. So we're going to look at the Earth Year 2138 explained and just get a little bit more backstory and understanding about how Momonga ends up spending so much time in Overlord, and just going to be learning a little bit more about the world of, or the Earth of 2138. I know that it is, very polluted. That's basically what I know about it. So I'm looking forward to finding out just a little bit more. Let's begin.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? And I am back again today for another installment in Overlord Explained, wherein I delve deeper into aspects of the Overlord world and story and explain them in a way that's easy to digest. Today we are going to be covering a topic that is pretty obscure even for fans of the Overlord light novel because the information is so spread out, and that is going to be the world of 2138, which is the name that refers to the real world that Ainz, who was originally the Japanese man Suzuki Satoru, is actually from. Now, most of the information about the world of 2138 that is given in the series comes from offhand comments made by Ainz during his internal dialogues. This happens pretty sporadically throughout the story, depending on what's happening, so I thought this video would be fun to try and consolidate what we know about Ainz's original world.
So that's really cool. Also, it just kind of makes sense that he wouldn't be thinking about his old world very often. Seems irrelevant to the world that he's currently in. And also sounds like it sucks. So it's like, let's just avoid thinking about it whenever possible. I appreciate that method of thinking.
Starting us off, the general description of the world of 2138 is that it's supposed to be a possible dystopian future reality of our actual world. One of the most prominent information points we get about the world of 2138 is how polluted the world has become by this point. By 2138, the destruction of the environment and industrialization had continued to the point where the world was now hopelessly polluted. The sky and sun could only be seen very rarely, as most of the atmosphere was hidden behind a black smog that now covered the sky. The smog was actually so bad that people no longer went outside without a gas mask on, or they otherwise risked major health concerns, and some people had to rely on artificial lungs in order to breathe the polluted air. It was actually mentioned by Ainz that he once recalled seeing people actually dying due to overexposure to the atmosphere.
The very air you breathe is a poisonous fume.
This pollution did not only extend to the air.
Also, anytime there's like a really solid reference to something else, that was an amazing Boromir pull. People don't usually use that one.
Since sunlight was now very rare, plant life decreased rapidly. Since plants convert carbon dioxide into oxygen, this only compounded the atmospheric pollution. The decline of plant life also similarly started a chain reaction in the ecosystem, leading to decreases in populations of various herbivores as well as environmentally beneficial insects such as bees. The pollution also extended to the water supply, turning lakes and rivers into horrible colors and making them unsafe to drink from. The water pollution was so bad that the public water purification systems could no longer keep up, and everyone had to filter their water personally before they could drink it. Additionally, rain became acidic as well as smelling terrible. Because of all the negative environmental changes, traditional farming became virtually extinct, and all vegetables and grains began having to be cultivated within domed environments. This decrease in the amount of crops being able to be produced led to the prices of food rising dramatically, with
honestly, I feel like it's not that far off, to be completely honest, at this point, where we're at currently. Feels like this might be a pretty accurate read.
Raw fruits and vegetables now being considered luxury foods that ordinary people couldn't afford. The poor mostly just ate supplements and processed food that prioritized nutritional delivery over taste.
Sorry, I only eat food in bar form.
With ingredients down, the dining industry naturally declined as well, and enjoying a meal in a restaurant became an experience for only the wealthy. Now, as a result of all the consequences with the environmental issues, civil unrest gradually grew in Japan. This continued to the point where there were riots over food, and these riots eventually turned into a full coup d'etat with the people overthrowing the previous government. Because of the power vacuum left by politicians, business conglomerates effectively seized governmental powers and took over the country officially.
And all of this is stuff that was mentioned? Like, this isn't just extrapolation. Okay. Yeah, I guess I can understand why he wouldn't be thinking about this a lot.
However, it's implied that businesses had been manipulating the government of Japan long before they officially took over the country.
Oh my god, businesses manipulating the government? Who'd ever see that coming? What? That sounds totally unrealistic.
and are also the actual reason behind the environmental destruction.
Oh
So
my
by
God,
that
the
point, the
businesses are the
eradication of the
reason behind
government
the
had
environmental
basically no
destruction?
effect on changing society. We don't really get too many specific descriptions on what occurred in countries outside of Japan, but it can be inferred that similar events took place all around the world. The combination of the environmental changes, along with the upheaval of the government, also led the structure of society to change. I previously mentioned that crops started to be cultivated only inside of domed environments. This domed structure also applied to the cities that developed in order to shield them from the horrible environment. People that were either a part or affiliated with the large business conglomerates lived in complete environment cities called arcologies. Arcology is actually a real-life term coined by architect Paolo Soleri in 1969. The term refers to a hypothetical architectural design for densely populated and ecologically low-impact human habitats. Funnily enough, in a 1984 cyberpunk novel called Neuromancer, each corporation in the world of the book has its own self-contained city known as an arcology, which is extremely similar to how the world of 2138 and Overlord operates. The arcologies owned by the companies were very secluded and sealed off from the outside world, and therefore did not experience nearly any of the hardships those outside had to deal with. They lived in luxury and relative safety compared to the outside, and this resulted in many people who lived in arcologies to see themselves as better and enjoyed how different their lives were compared to those outside. Arcologies became so powerful that eventually they became states in and of themselves, with cities being built around them. Arcologies also sometimes went to war with each other, as in the Overlord light novel, it was stated that 20 years ago there was a conflict between the European arcologies.
Uniforms worn in this conflict are what inspired Einstein's design of. Oh, that's cool. That explains also why he was thinking about it.
That became known as the Euro-Arcology Wars. As you can probably guess from the description I've given so far, and was actually said by Maruyama himself, the world of 2138 was extremely class-based. Those outside of the arcologies lived in cities that were considered to be much lower in quality compared to arcologies. The police had ceased to function and only remained as an organization in name, which made crime much more rampant. There were sometimes terror attacks on the wealthy, but they were almost never affected by these actions because they lived so far cut off from the rest of the world. The wealthy never experienced any sort of crime, while those outside of the arcologies had to deal with gangs, thieves, and hackers operating out in the open. Now, despite the increased crime, society as a whole still continued to function for the most part. However, work environments were extremely bad, with employees being treated very poorly. However, it was extremely rare for anyone to rebel against their administration due to the conditions of the world. Whereas in the past, if a person was
yeah, where are they gonna go? Like, it seems like there's nowhere to go at this point. It's what, I'm going to not have a job and now I'm on the streets in this polluted air that you can't breathe. I feel like that's how they get ya. That's how they get ya.
Forced to leave their company, there might have been ways they could still get their own food. However, in 2138, that was no longer possible due to the environmental problems, so anyone who didn't live or work in a city would not be able to get access to food unless they stole it from someone else.
I was never in this for the money. But it turns out that the money was an absolute necessity for me.
The only option workers had was to just follow the company orders and keep...
Agree with Michael Scott right there. So like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because I want to do more stuff like this. And it's difficult if I don't have any money. There's also a Patreon if you want to see these early.
Working due to their existence being entirely dependent on them. Companies also apparently had no problems with even assassinating people to protect their interests. We know this because
I wonder if that's also based on reality. Allegedly.
A member of Ainz Ul Gon named Bell River learned some ambiguously described information about one of the mega corporations that rules the world. It was later found out that he knew this information, and he was actually killed in such a way that it looked like an accident in order to keep that information from getting out.
Whoa.
So far, Bell River is the only known player of Yggdrasil and a member of Ainz Ul Gon confirmed to have died in real life.
Wow.
Education in the world of 2138 had also been affected drastically by the change in power dynamics. Compulsory...
You know what? I see things like that, like the way that he's describing the world and everything. It makes it make so much more sense that they did an evil campaign. It's like, because you want to be, sometimes you're so pushed low, and it's like, I want to be able to do just absolutely heinous acts, and just destroy. Can I just break stuff? I do occasionally, sometimes I just get them. I want to break something. I don't. but then I might go play BioShock for a little bit and just, destroy people. And then I do stuff like buy knives. This is a really cool one that I just bought. Look how pretty. Look how pretty it is. Anyway, I do stuff like this so that I can get over myself a little bit. See, look at it go. Isn't that awesome? For YouTube purposes, it's fake. But anyway, that's how I cope. So I can understand a little bit more why they want to do a evil campaign and why they want to be monsters and horrible creatures and and I get it. I can understand it a little bit more now that he's explaining exactly how this world works. Because I admit I've been a little bit judgy in the past. Just a little bit. But you've got no creative expression. You're just tortured, basically. There's no one you can go to for help. Yeah, I can see why you'd want to just be awful in a video game for a little while. Just get some of that destructive tendencies out.
Education was dismantled in Japan, and tuition became required to even attend elementary school. Despite this, schooling was still a requirement to get a decent job, so it was common for parents to overwork themselves in order to provide their children with schooling. In the case of Ainz, as well as his fellow guildmate Olbert, both of their parents ended up dying due to exhaustion from overwork. It was implied in the story that this was entirely intentional from the business conglomerates, as they wanted to deprive the poor of education opportunities. This in turn would make a more subservient working class for the upper classes to exploit, as an uneducated population is that much easier to control. Overall, just graduating from elementary school was enough of a baseline for the poorer classes to get a job that many considered that amount of education to be a success. Okay, now that we've described the bigger worldview, we can get into the aspects of the world of 2138 that directly relate to the advent of Yggdrasil and the rise of DMMORPGs. With the atmosphere polluted, leisure activities outside became virtually impossible to pursue. Playing sports became too expensive as you could no longer play them outside, and renting an indoor facility was too expensive for most people. The pollution of mountains and oceans also led to tourism being virtually eradicated, and outdoor leisure activities such as swimming and hiking had gone extinct for the poor. The only activities the poor could enjoy were things that they could do at home, such as board games, streaming movies, or playing video games, such as the DMMORPG Yggdrasil. DMMORPGs became so popular due to being able to escape the rather hopeless reality a lot of people had to deal with. Yggdrasil in particular was unique in the DMMORPG scene for the shift in focus on battles to a focus on exploration. For example, the only other DMMORPG mentioned in the series besides Yggdrasil was a game named Aberrage. In this game, players would build their own power suits and battle against each other. However, DMMORPGs had several limits on them. For one, it was still impossible, even with the advanced technology, for developers to properly model facial expressions when talking, so characters' faces never changed. Players expressed emotions through the use of emoticons. Additionally,
okay, cool. That's really interesting. Which it kind of okay, I like that because I remember him using the emoticons and stuff, but I don't. It also kind of explains why you'd go with like a thing with a mask or like a weird looking creature that doesn't really shift its expression, because if it's not going to shift anyway, might as well just build that into the character. I like it.
DMMORPGs were not allowed to provide sensory data for taste or smell. Sense of touch was also severely dulled. These restrictions were placed into the games in order to prevent people from being confused about which world was the real world. It was also for these reasons that VR systems never found any use in the sex industry.
What did he say? What the fuck? What the fuck?
The advent of DMMORPGs shows the level of technological advancement that had taken place by 2138. The specific technology we have the most information on is the neural nano interface that is briefly shown being used by Suzuki Satoru. The system was initially created for use by the military, but the cost ended up being too high. Therefore, the design was simplified, and by 2138 it became a household staple technology. The technology is used by first injecting a syringe of nanomachines directly into the person using it, which would allow their brain to function like a super high-performance computer. The user would then connect to the network, and the cranial CPU would read the electrical impulses of their synapses and convert them into data.
What?
In simpler terms,
Yeah,
the
what?
technology was able to be controlled through a person's thoughts. In the Overlord Twitter side story, it was said that the neural nano interface connects to the brain directly to something called the Megacon. What information do we have on the Megacon?
Nothing!
Fun
Yeah, it's
fact,
not
the
real.
Overlord Twitter side story, while originally being conceived as a non-canon small side story, was later converted into the prologue of what would become the Overlord bonus volume, which was released almost 4 years later. Continuing
Cool.
on, the helmet we see being used by Suzuki Satoru was not actually required hardware to operate the interface, but was created as a safety net for users. The helmet included recording software to record everything that happened in the virtual world, which was mandated by law. This happened because the interface was occasionally used in crimes, whereby hackers could utilize the brains of others in the network in order to commit crimes. Thus, the
yikes.
helmets were designed to record the virtual information so a user could prove their own
Okay,
innocence if they were
so-
ever implicated in a crime.
Like a
Because
body
of this
cam.
functionality, it was very rare for a person who utilized the interface to not use the VR helmet. Additionally,
sense
the
to use
user's
it.
thoughts could reach into their supercomputer through the use of a cable that attaches to the user's neural port, which is also shown to be used by Suzuki Satoru. As a result of this, the
I just am like, anytime that there's something that connects right into your brain like that, I'm like, gives me this squick. And that I think that's a little bit because the first time I really saw that in use was in like a Doctor Who episode where it was in the front of his head and like it just like beams would go into his brain so he could like see and hear stuff. And it was very uncomfortable. It was with the click and it would open and then close. Ugh. So anyway, I just like think of that and I'm like, ugh. Also, it's like the idea of having something that's just injected directly into my brain is horrifying to me.
user can manipulate an invisible console to operate various things in their house, such as operating their TV with just the use of hand gestures alone. However, the technology was limited by the functionality of the nanomachines in the user. To enable a full operational neural connection, like when starting up a game like Yggdrasil, nanomachines would have to be replenished in the user's system. By 2138
Oh,
though,
wow.
cerebral nanomachines could be bought at common drugstores and clinics.
of course.
Other than the neuro-nano interface, no other technologies are given as much information or description, but just knowing about the neuro-nano interface being a common household technology implies the general level of technological advancement present. Additionally, it was mentioned by Maruyama that the world of 2138 did have giant mecha robots, but they were only used for experimentation and had no other use. It was
Bummer.
also mentioned offhandedly that it was
Like you couldn't use it for, I mean, deep sea stuff. Like places like the environment sucks. Why wouldn't you use them for like building construction or something?
apparently possible for people to fully convert themselves into cyborgs. So guys, that covers all the big points of what we know about the world
Dang.
of 2138. As you can probably
said
covers all
wasn't?
apparently possible for experimentation and had no other use. It was also mentioned
was,
offhandedly
okay.
that it was apparently possible for
Okay, so it was, I thought maybe I'd missed that, but dang.
people to fully convert themselves into cyborgs. So guys, that covers all the big points of what we know about the world of 2138. As you can probably tell from the description, it is a very extreme cyberpunkish dystopian world that I personally would have zero interest in living in. If you
mean,
ask me, Suzuki Satoru caught a
getting
break
close.
being isekai to the new world, and I also think knowing this information helps explain why he had so little interest in potentially returning to his original world. Compared to his
does.
old one, the new world is practically a paradise. So I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit that like button to let me know. If you have any questions or just want to let me know what you're thinking, please leave your comments in the comments section below. And if you aren't already, please subscribe to the channel. It does help me out more than you know, and it'll let you know when I post in the future. With that
Also
being
that.
said, I want to thank you all for watching to the very end of the video,
welcome.
and I will see you all next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Wait, what's going-
Hey, stop. Wink. All right. I'm going to give him a like. So maybe you can also go and do that for him and then also do it for me if you're here on YouTube. And because yes, this will come out a little bit earlier on Patreon, but thank you so much for watching. That honestly does explain a lot. It does explain a lot because I think that was a question that I had a few times. It's like, does he care about what happened to himself back in the old one? Like, is his body still there? I'm still a little confused about that. Is his body dead in the original world and his brain is just now here? But doesn't really matter. I understand now why he doesn't want to go back because that place sounds like it sucks and it's not like he had anybody left to like mourn him really. So yeah, let's just that's fine. Makes, and again, like I was saying earlier, like it does make a certain amount of sense, like based on how things were, why people would be interested in being just horrific in this new world where they can kind of get away with it and they don't have to do it in the real world. And because again, like people are like, video games make people violent. I'm like, I think video games oftentimes give people an outlet for violence that they feel. So awesome. I thought this was really cool. So thanks for suggesting it. Thanks to ZeronicKiba for making it. And enjoy the rest of your night, day, morning, whatever time it is. See you then.